Hey guys, and welcome to 2026. I cannot believe it is 2026, and I can't believe it's the first Thursday of 2026. I wanted to sit down and just chat, give a little update since I haven't been able to sit down and chat with you guys for a while, and just I think the point of this one will be updates, bullet points of what to expect going forward this year with my Patreon page, and then give a little bit of an origin story of me, kind of give a starting point of where I want to Rose. And then at the end, I'm going to do something that I want to start incorporating, which will add a little bit of complexity and depth and a little bit of like tying into like what I kind of want to do with Patreon. So the point, and I know I've said this before, but I'm committing now because I have so many stories and I have so much experience and I have so many things that I could share with you guys. And the biggest message I think in my mind and in my heart lately is just to be like as of much service as I can. And I have an education, I have degrees, I have ways and so many things that I can do to help other people and to share. And I really like the connection. Like I genuinely do. I know that I genuinely like the connection and the community and helping and everyone sharing and finding some relatability and common ground. And even if it's not that, then it's like opening, each other's eyes to a different outlook or a different perspective or different knowledge or different things that we might be curious about or didn't even know. So that's what's been in my heart lately. But to be really honest with you, last year was one of the hardest years I've ever had. Emotionally, I went through it, and I've definitely shifted now. And I'm so grateful for that, but I'm in a different place. And so like I know I've been trying to launch and had a little bit of failure to launch, but anyway, doesn't matter. We're here now and we're gonna move forward. So update, since about October, I haven't really been able to do a whole lot with, the holidays and kids being in and out of school. And again, my son's medical stuff. We've had every illness that is possible to catch right now. We've had that for some reason. The super flu, my daughter and I both got that. My son escaped it, but my youngest and I got it bad, and we were down bad. It fucked us up, like, oh my gosh. And then also like my immune system hasn't been as great because also, if you remember last year, like last August, right before my 40th birthday, I got super sick with food poisoning, 2 different types, and it left me with post-infectious gastroparesis. So I was very ill, and then I wasn't eating a whole lot, so my nutrients were down, and my immune system is now, it needs to spring back. So I'm also going to be focusing a lot in the new year on immune health and probably talking a lot about that on Instagram and maybe here as well. And then, I'm going to come up with like groups and programs and things that we can do together here on Patreon. And I'm not trying to lose, just stay with me. I chopped my hair off a little bit because I was frustrated with like being so sick and all the things I had going on, and I wasn't able to get to the salon. And I love my hair girl so much. She's so wonderful. But I ended up chopping it because I've lost and I'm still losing hair because of the weight loss. I lost 30 pounds. I went from 146 at my highest, and then I got down to 117 at my lowest. Right now I'm back up to about 121. I just want to stay somewhere between that, like 115 and 122. I just need to tone it up. So also working on that in the new year. But I ended up, having lost a lot of weight in the kind of a short amount of time, ended up losing a lot of my hair. So I chopped it. But I am going to go see her soon, and we are going to be able to look forward to being more blonde again pretty soon. So that's kind of a little bit of the update as far as that. I mean, there's a lot more, but I don't want to harp on a lot of things. I'm in such a better place that I just feel like right now committing to this and being able to share with you guys and moving forward is the way to go. And I want to build, like I said, build this community and just have this positive place where the stories might not always be so great. Some of the stories are some of them can be pretty sad, but still at the end of the day, I want it to be inspiring and uplifting and a place where people can come, whether they're cleaning or driving, or at the end of the day when you want to wind down and just change your headspace and maybe like learn something or hear something or whatever the case may be. That I want to be that place where people can come and feel like, it's not another podcast. Maybe you're just feeling like you're, listening to a friend on FaceTime or something like that. That's going to be kind of podcasty style, I guess. But it's not another podcast. And I'm toying around with some names for what I want to call it when it is specifically that, like story time type, podcast thing. And I think I'm settled on Don't Say Nuthin, because 2 reasons. I always say that. And also because it's kind of ironic, because we're not going to be saying nothing. We're going to be saying a whole lot. Like, no censor, no blocks, no filters. When I'm telling a story, I'm just going to go for it. So that's the plan. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, I guess tonight's the first one, but going forward, you could expect Tuesdays and Thursdays to hear from your girl and share some stories. And then I'm going to end it with something cool, and you'll see at the end of this one. So I think one of the most commonly asked questions for me, and what comes up the most, is how did you find your way into the adult industry? What possessed you? What made you want to do something like that? And the short answer is I still really don't know. At 40 years old, I got into it when I was 21, 22. And at 40 years old, I still really don't know. So I guess this series will start diving into a little bit of my origin story. And we'll start, I'll just say right now, when I was that age, 21, 22, I was going through a breakup. I started researching modeling, and I got into modeling. And I can elaborate more other times, but I want to use this point to jump back all the way to the beginning of me. But I started modeling, had some success, went to California, met with a producer, a guy, an editor, and he was like, you're not gonna, in this town, not anymore, you're not gonna be successful if you want to be a mainstream model. He's like, but if you want to be really famous and rich, get into porn. And at that time I was like, you're crazy. All I'm gonna be doing is modeling. There's no fucking way. I go back to Oklahoma. I reassess everything. It was like all of my childhood and everything that I still resented came up. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to Florida. I went to Florida. I had some hesitations. I just did some nude modeling or whatever. Called my mom, of all people. And this will make more sense later. It won't make sense to you right now. Right now you're thinking, why wouldn't you call your mom? Or it was a little bit weird that you call your mom if you guys are so close and whatever. We weren't. And of all people, I think because I knew what she would say. She wouldn't tell me no. She said that if that's what I want to do, she said, honey, then you should do it. It's not going to change who you are. It doesn't matter. Fuck it. Everyone has sex. Do it. So I went on the phone with her and I signed immediately the contract. And it was a contract with my agent, not like the contract I signed with the company that I ended up exclusively working for. We'll get there. So going back to my mom and I not being close, we'll go all the way back. So my mom and my dad, I'll put a picture. That's my mom, my dad, and me. My mom and my dad met in the late summer, early fall of 1984. I was born in August of 1985. My mom was beautiful. She was a porcelain doll. She was just so gorgeous. She smoked, but other than that, she had never taken any substances. She had never been addicted to anything. She was just beautiful, very troubled. Going back a little bit into her childhood, she always had issues. But back then, your parents didn't really look into that sort of thing, especially lower to middle class families. My grandparents had my mom when my grandmother was 15 and my grandfather was 19 years old. So they were also babies, and I loved them so much, but that made me a huge proponent, even from a early age, that babies should not be having babies. And you'll understand more as time goes on. But my mother always was troubled. She was always troubled. Probably a lot of ADHD at the time, but again, they didn't really look into that back then. And then 4 years after she was born, her sister, my aunt, was born, and she was not so troubled. And so she was paid a little bit more attention to and babied a little bit more than my mother was. If you ask other people, they'll tell you something different, but the reality is that they gravitated toward the easier child and just let my mom take the easy way out of things. They didn't really pay much attention. So that, as you could imagine, expanded into other things. Come to find out a little bit later, when I was about 5 years old, my mom came out and said that my grandfather's father had molested her and told her not to tell anyone because she would get shipped away, and a lot of that. So I think that pushed my mom out the door at an early age and into my dad's arms. which I think is kind of a common story. It's unfortunate that that happened to my mother. I'm not trying to take that away from her in any way. And it's all very fucked up how it happened to her and not fair. But that they met at a call center where back in that time they would sell coupon books. And my dad, he took the job in Arkansas and it moved him to Oklahoma. My dad's originally from Arkansas, his whole family's there. Moved him to Oklahoma. My mom was a secretary at this, I guess, call center, so people would call in interested in these books, and then they would direct it to the salesman, and that was my dad. My dad could sell ice to an Eskimo. My father is a charming man. He has very good intentions when it comes to having goodwill towards others, but he is a con artist. He spent most of my childhood in prison and then into my teen years in prison as well. My mom also spent time in prison with me growing up, but we'll get there. They met doing that, and they just instantly, it was like an instant, huge, intense, but very toxic thing. My father, even at his age, my mom was 19, he was 21, he was already abusing alcohol very badly. And it was a huge issue because my mom did not do any substances besides smoke. But as they got pregnant with me very early on, and even during her pregnancy, she quit smoking cold turkey. She did not smoke at all. She was very particular. She wouldn't even let my dad smoke around her because of the secondhand or the way that she thought it was just disgusting, rightfully. But anyways, those issues started then when she was pregnant with me. He was going out, he was getting drunk, he wasn't coming home. They're so young at that age. And there are people who have kids that age, step up and do fine. These two did not. Here to tell you right now, these two did not. And by the time I was 1, my earliest memories, I swear to God, are when I started walking really early. I was an early baby for everything. I started walking when I was 9, 10 months old. I was potty trained way before I was a year and a half. And I have these very early memories of them fighting, screaming at each other, shouting at each other violently. And my mom she's hot-headed as hell. My dad's not so confrontational, so it was a lot of him trying to combat her and her getting worse. She's a hot-headed female, very hot-headed. And she doesn't take shit from anyone. She never did, ever. And I wish I had more of that from her sometimes. But I remember very specifically having a blue Daffy Duck bottle, and I wanted them to quit fighting so bad, even being so tiny. And so every time I was drinking water out of it. I had no milk, and that was it. They wouldn't give me any more milk because it was nighttime. So I would go in the kitchen and they would refill it with water from the tap, give me back my little bottle, and start fighting again. And those are one of my earliest memories. Another one of my earliest memories was, it was really cold outside. It was like snow. I remember it was very cold, snowing probably. And by the way, I'm younger than 2. And I was eating macaroni and cheese and I stuck one up my nose. And my mom freaked out, flipped out, made my dad leave, go to the store, get one of those nose suckers, come back. I remember he had this long leather trench coat on. Are you okay over there, kitty? Long leather trench coat on, came back, freezing cold, sucked that macaroni out of my nose, and then I ate it. I remember my mom going, "Oh, Ashley Lee Ann." She was so grossed out. It has nothing to do with them fighting. Those are just my early memories. Those are some of my earliest memories. But it was I'd only lived with, my mom and dad separated way before I was 2. Tried a couple of times to be friendly for the sake of their child. Did not work. These two, oh my gosh, did not have any business being together. And it was hard on me when I saw them fighting constantly. It sucked. And I only lived with my mother until I was 7, but we'll get there. But there was a time when my dad, when he wanted to see me, my mom would never say no. And I loved my dad, I really did, but there was an understanding of, he just wasn't, he was great, but we were more friends. I want him to be more of a fatherly figure. Not that I had really any true idea of what that actually meant in my tiny little brain, but I just knew that he wasn't the one he was great and I felt safe-ish with him-ish, but my mom was the one that took care of me until she didn't anymore. Before my mom got bad, my dad picked me up one time and we were gonna go ride horses, and he got pulled over for a DUI, and one of his friends had to come pick me up and get me back to my mother. And I was little, 4, maybe 3, 4 years old. And that was pretty traumatizing, honestly, at that time. And then after that is when my mom, I think that's when she started spiraling. She started dating women, which I'm not saying that that's spiraling, but that was different because I was like, my mom has girlfriends now. She had one girlfriend that I loved. Her name was Terry. She was wonderful. And I always think to myself that if my mom had stayed with Terry, how different my life probably would have been. She took such good care of my mom. She had money. She worked for UPS. She was incredible. She took care of me. I felt so safe with her. And then my mom sabotaged that. My mom didn't know any better. She didn't know how to do anything else but sabotage. And Lord forbid anyone go to therapy at that time. And then she got with this other lady named Shannon. And that's when my mom went downhill. I noticed. It was very noticeable, from having a mom who only smoked cigarettes to now there's weed in the house. And yes, I knew what weed was at a young age, to finding her sex toys, to hearing her have sex with this woman, to, which not saying there's a bad thing, but it was just different for me, to booze being in the house, and then to me noticing noticeably that my mom was on something very much harder. She went from quickly smoking cigarettes to then weed, then alcohol, and then the hard drugs came. And that's when we moved from a really nice part of town to the ghetto. My dad tried really hard to intervene, but he was also very troubled, obviously still an alcoholic, and there's not a whole lot he could do. He didn't have a stable environment for me either. And my mom got real bad. There were 3-4 days of the week I wouldn't go to school. She almost got arrested for truancy. I would go to school with dirty clothes. There was one day I did go to school and I came home and all of my things from my bedroom, except for my bed and my sheets, had been pawned. Everything. My yearbooks. Who the fuck wants a yearbook? My phone. I had a little TV in there. Most of my clothes were gone. Everything was gone. And she was also gone. I had no explanation for anything. I thought, oh, well, she'll just be home pretty soon. And a couple of days went by, and I was 7, by the way. It was the very end of my 2nd grade year. And she still hadn't come home for a couple of days. Our phone was shut off because obviously she couldn't pay the bills. I had finally ran out of everything there is to eat in the fridge. By the way, today I still can't eat scrambled eggs because that's sometimes all I would have to eat. No butter, no salt and pepper, just the scrambled eggs. Can't eat that anymore at all. The smell of it, can't do it. And also to this day, I have a huge, I guess, trauma response to not having a lot of food in the house. If we have just essentials, but we don't have other ingredients or other things to eat, I get very tight-chested. And then once I finally go to the grocery store, when I come home and put the groceries away and everything, it's the greatest drug I've ever experienced. It's the greatest hit of dopamine and serotonin for me. Could be worse, right? Anyways, she didn't come home for a couple of days, and I had to walk down to the convenience store in the ghetto, by the way. This was not a good part of town, horrible part of town, and call my grandparents. And I had to say, she's been gone for a couple of days and I'm hungry. And no sooner and they lived about 30 minutes away ish, 20-30. No sooner from the time I walked from the gas station back to the apartment, they were there. And they walked in the door, and right after they walked in the door, my mother walked through the door. And she was about this big around. At that point, she weighed maybe 80 pounds. And before that, I still had bruises on my body, but before that, she had come home. We had a bat by the door. She was tripping balls. She thought, and this was, I guess, a week before this had all happened. She picked up the bat and she started hitting me with it. She wasn't very strong. I was in the bath when she came home and I was dripping wet, and I turned off the bath and I stood up really fast. I remember scraping my back really hard on the faucet, and I was like, Mom, I scraped my back. She thought, she came in there and I was getting out of the bath. She was tripping so hard, she thought I was a monkey. And she's like, why the fuck is there a monkey in my house? She had the bat, starts hitting me. I'm really slippery, so I get away. And then I had to take the bat from her and back her into the corner. Be like, Mom, it's me. And then she, I guess, snapped out of it somehow. I don't know, started crying, oh my baby. And then she went to bed for a couple of days. Anyway, I still had bruises on my body from that. And my grandpa asked what had happened, and I started telling him. And as soon as I started telling him, he picks her up by her scrawny little neck and he slams her against the wall in the living room where the TV used to be, but it wasn't there anymore because she pawned it. And he said, we're taking that baby with us. And if you try to come after her at any point in time, I will, or you will be in prison. He said, do not come near her ever again. Anyway, it has been quite some time, and I have healed and I have processed, but those memories coming up can be raw only because they're both dead now, my papa and my mom. And from that point on, it's like now, as an adult who takes care of children and has kids of her own, I understand that from coming from him. But I wanted my mom so bad, but she was told to stay the hell away. So I get both sides. And so we'll end it here, but we packed up everything that I own, everything in my little tiny 7-year-old possession fit in one black garbage bag. And I went to Mama and Papa's house, that's what I called them, Mama and Papa, and I lived with them from that point on. And everything that happened from then was just a series of trying to process everything at a young age, missing my mom so bad, my mother, and I didn't really understand. All I thought that was gonna happen was that she would get better and come back for me. Didn't happen. And then my dad then going in and out of prison kept he and I's relationship distant, but he tried. But we'll go ahead and end it there as far as the story goes. But I wanted to start with, I guess, how some of their troubles bled over. And I just want to say right now, I don't blame them anymore. I think they made a lot of mistakes and they made a lot of choices that sucked ass. But I don't blame them anymore, because now in my adult life, anything that happens is my responsibility. My healing, my processing, my everything is my responsibility. Back then in my early 20s when I got into the industry, I still had a lot of blame and I still had a lot of hurt in my heart. And at that, I don't blame that 21-year-old me. 40-year-old me does not blame her for a lot of it, and I don't wish anything differently. But now everything that's happened is on me. It's me. It's not on anybody else at all, especially now. I've got my kids to worry about, and I'll be damned if I let anything happen to them in that nature. So we'll stop there, and I want to end with something completely off topic, and let's do that. Okay, so again, from a public submission, we're going to call her Mary for the sake of this story. And it's one of the most detailed, and I've heard a lot and I've seen a lot of like near-death experience videos and stories and books, and it's kind of in the realm of like what I'm doing now, aside from what I was already doing. Anyway, this is one of the most detailed instances that I've ever heard. And this is not to scare anyone. This is not to like throw anyone off or use any like tactics or anything. I just think it's beautiful. And I think that it can give us all some hope that there is something after this, because I'm a firm believer in that. I've seen things myself. I've had a near-death experience myself. So anyways, for the sake of this story, we're going to call her Mary. At the time, she had been working as a nurse for 2 years. She is an RN, working in a hospital and living across the street in hospital apartment living. She had been sick for a while. It started off as the flu, and then after like a month or two, it turned into a very rare form of pneumonia that's very kind of contagious. And she was working with 3 other nurses. They got the pneumonia, but they didn't get the strain that she had. One night back at the apartments that the hospital living across the street, her fever spiked to like 104.2. One of the nurses that she worked with was able to help her across the street and to the ER, to which point she got to the emergency room. They knew who she was, obviously, because she had been working at the hospital as a nurse for 2 years. They got her into the emergency room, and she immediately, we'll just say she kind of flatlined for the sake of the story. For a little while, she was in and out of consciousness. She said that when she would fall out of consciousness at that time, it was incredibly painful. Her fever would spike up to like 105, almost 106, and then she'd kind of come to a little bit more and be kind of fine, but she would start uncontrollably shaking, and then she would fall back into unconsciousness. And she said that this went on for like a while. She has no concept of time for that period, but she said that it went on for a while, to the point where she just kept begging them to like let her go because she was in so much pain, but they were trying so hard to get the fever down and try to keep her stable, and they were unable to do that. She said on one of the final instances, she felt a presence around her. She just felt this like omnipresent energy. And she said, I didn't see them, I just felt it, and I just begged. I said, this hurts so bad. Can you please just let me go, let me pass? She said in that moment, she knew that she had died. There was no tunnel, there was no anything. It was an instantaneous transport to this beautiful field of flowers. She said she had never seen any flowers like this before. She had never seen any colors like this before. And she had never smelled that floral smell that she was smelling at that point. She said then she walked over to another part of the field, and she very specifically saw it was millions of bearded irises. And I think that's so specific. She said she was so compelled to bend down and smell them, and it smelled like she was smelling the freshest lemonade that she could never even imagine in her entire life. Then she said there was a low stone wall at the edge of the field where she could feel like energetically someone coming, but she couldn't see them yet. And then she said suddenly there was a giant golden carriage that pulled up, that was being pulled by two beautiful white horses. She said she just immediately, it's like she didn't really have feet or legs. She just felt herself being like energetically drawn into this carriage. She says when she got into the carriage, there were others, but at that time, the others she didn't recognize, and all of them seemed to be just like a little bit confused. But she said somehow she felt, they didn't communicate with their mouths, but somehow she felt like they were all kind of there under the same circumstance somehow. She said that they were taken to this mansion, but it was unlike any like house you would see here on earth, but it was just like this beautiful mansion. So they took them into this very specific room, and she said the room was robin's egg blue with gold candlesticks and white candles all over the room, which is like, to see that the robin's egg blue is like so specific. Then she says at the far edge of the room, this room is huge, magnificent. At the far edge of the room, there are two huge arched doors. And she said through those doors, she saw angels. She said they were terrifying and beautiful at the same time. She said these angels were 10 to 12 feet. They were humongous. They were absolutely gorgeous. But at the same time, like, if you don't know what you're looking at or you don't know what you're walking into, she was like, I was a little like energetically apprehensive, but at the same time, I had no fear, nothing whatsoever. The only thing I felt at that time was a lot of love. And then she said they just started taking people into these archways by group. So it was grouped by age. It was like young and old. There were like animals. And then there were like different like ethnicities going through these arches. And they were taking them like by group at a time through the archways. And the angels were ushering them. So it was almost endless. Like one angel would go and another one would come. And they were just ushering these people, these souls, through these archways. She said she walked up, she never got called like in any group, but she wanted to see what was on the other side. And she said when she looked on the other side, there was this sound that just like radiated through her entire spirit. And it was like a song being sung by just countless, just trillions of people in harmony, all on different frequencies. And she said that the colors and the sounds and the smells and everything was unlike anything you would ever find on earth. She said she felt such a like immense connection to that, so much so where she felt like a stranger if she were to go back to her body. And then she said she felt someone behind her. Then she said she felt several people behind her. So she turns around to see in this same room her family members, like her grandmother who had passed, some aunts and uncles who had passed, and she wanted to run up and hug them so badly. And they said, no, stop. You know, don't come any closer. Like, we're so excited to see you. We love you so much. We're so happy that you're here, but it's not your time. And she was begging them and saying, like, please don't make me go back to my body. I hurt so bad in my human body and I can't do it anymore. They're like, no, you can't stay here. Your job on earth is not done. She said at that point, she was so upset that they were saying that she couldn't stay, that it wasn't her time, that she attempted to bolt through the doors, and one of the angels placed his hand on her energetic chest, or placed some appendage on her energetic chest, and it was almost like he sent a jolt through her body, and she was sent back to the ICU. She did say that her healing time after that happened it did take kind of a while, but she was able to make a full recovery, obviously, but she had been dead, clinically dead, for 8 minutes. And there was no drug, there was no nothing involved. She just had no oxygen, like, left in her body whatsoever. So they spent those 8 minutes and a little bit beyond trying to get oxygen back into her body, and she did come back. But the doctors, the nurses, everyone told her that it should not have been possible for them to resuscitate her in the manner that they did. But they did. And she said that it felt just as real as her getting up and brushing her teeth, driving to work, hugging her kids, just being in the same room with her family. She said it felt so real, and it felt so much better. Like, it felt, like that was a home that I had been longing for that I never knew. And she says while she's grateful that she did get to come back, this was 39 years ago, she got to come back and live her life. She went on to getting her master's in nursing, becoming like a PA, and being very successful in that field, and being able to apply, I guess, like what she had learned in that situation for herself into her career and her life. And she says now that she is, although she has no death wish and she's not like suicidal or anything like that, she is excited to go back. Like, she since that day, it has still felt so real. Nothing has ever felt more real to her, she says, and that she can't wait to go back and like see her family again and everything like that. And since then, she's lost family members, and she said the way that she grieves is so much different. Like, yeah, she misses them in the physical, but she's so happy, so much happier and more confident, like where they are now, that it has helped her so much in life. And so I thought that was a very beautiful, kind of detailed experience. So if you have anything like it, even if it's not a near-death experience, but something very, very spiritual like that happened, please share it with me. I can share your story anonymously, but I feel like these things help people so much, like in the grand scheme of like fear of like what happens after this. So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening and for being here, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye.